and welcome to Exploring Hobbies. I'm Jamie Fouché, and we are here today to talk about photography. And joining us is Tom Culler.
Hi.
Welcome, Tom.
I'm happy to be here.
We're excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Photography is one of those great things that just is very accessible to a lot of people.
Certainly is.
You know, most of us have cameras between the phones, especially
Yes.
now. You know, a lot of people are taking pictures.
Yes.
But there's certainly so much more to it than that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you bring up a great point right off the bat. Photography is everywhere. I mean, literally, there's so few camera phones these days that don't have cameras. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, they're called camera phones, right?
Yeah.
Smartphones, phones with cameras built in. So it is accessible. The hobby is accessible to just about anybody, and there are those who want to get started with something other than their camera phone, like point and shoots. They don't. There are people who don't know what to buy, and we can talk about that. But yes, at the very least, you can start with your camera phone.
Exactly. So how did you get started in photography?
How did I get started? I actually, my father was a photographic engineer. Actually has 2 patents to his name for color film development.
Exciting.
Yeah, well, I don't know how exciting it
is, though.
Pretty
That's
cool,
kind of a neat story.
It introduced me to photography, and to see my dad with his equipment and setting up lights in our living room. To take pictures of myself and my brother and sister, the family. Dad, we have to take pictures again. Here's the lights, and okay, we'll do this. But I got the bug, and I took photography in high school, like a lot of kids do. Well, those who are interested in photography anyway.
To get to take the yearbook pictures.
Yes, I started.
Sorry, thought it was important to make that point.
I started with family pictures. I started with family pictures, but yes, I was doing did the yearbook pictures, and that was really cool because doing the yearbook photos, I'm seeing my name in print underneath photos. I said, oh my gosh, I've got a byline. I've got my name on something that I created. This is really cool. Yeah. So I learned with a film camera, like most kids do. I got when I was 16 or so, I got my first SLR, single lens reflex camera, which is a camera with an interchangeable lens. I got whatever model I got. It was a Sears. It was a really popular model. A lot of people had them, and so I thought, okay, that must be the model to get, right? In photography class, we learned how to develop our own film and print our own prints on paper, and pretty soon I had at home. I had film drying from the laundry room ceiling, and I was I've still got some of those negatives, which is fun to look back at.
That's great,
because I keep everything. So yeah, I went from that to I was a father relatively early. I actually had kids that I adopted when I was 21, 22.
Wow. Yeah,
so I was taking pictures of kids right away, and their dance recitals or whatever other activities were going on.
Most parents have rolls and rolls of film, right?
Absolutely. And of course, I've still got shoe boxes full of prints that we'd get, and like a lot of people, if you remember the film days, you get your prints back, and you may end up throwing away 23, 24 of the prints. And we can get into digital in a few minutes, but in the film days, or even with slides or with prints, you don't know what you're getting right away. Yeah. So yeah, I went through that too, but practice makes perfect, and eventually you learn what settings you should use and how to get better pictures, and so.
So when did it become not just something that you did because, like every parent, you take pictures or you have this? When did you know you had the bug? This was a passion and an interest. It wasn't just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it wasn't just something that you did because you needed a camera.
So it's interesting because my focus changed as my life changed, right? And as a teenager, it was about school and the kids at school and activities at schools and sports or kids in the hall or whatever it might be. Again, when I had kids, all of a sudden I started taking kid pictures because, again, that was what my life was.
Yeah.
You know, my kids. As the kids get older, I started finding other things that I wanted to shoot. I still love sports. I still shoot regularly. In fact, I'll be shooting tonight sporting events.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I would do it either for the kids at school or for other parents, and parents would love to see pictures of their kids on the court or on the field or whatever. And so I would just do it because I'd give them prints because, you know, I'm getting something out of this because I'm practicing. I'm learning what looks good on paper and what looks good in the camera, how that translates to paper. And the parents are getting something out of it because they get to watch the game while somebody else takes the pictures.
Yeah.
Right? So it actually is, you know, back then you're out the cost of the paper and the film, but it's a minor thing if you really love to do it. It's the paper and the film back then where it's a minor inconvenience, although it could get pretty expensive sometimes. Now you pay for memory cards and
you're done, right? Do people still use film? You know,
wow,
is there a segment of people who just won't give up?
There's certainly, absolutely. There are devotees out there who just love the look of film. Same people that same group of people that would like vinyl records versus CDs versus DVDs. There's a warmth to film that is really hard to approximate in the digital world. Photoshop, and that's the tool I use the most, but Photoshop has great add-ins to help add that film look. And you can't always tell that it's been manipulated, but film is a very warm. Of course, it's again, unless you're very careful and you're paying attention to your settings and your shutter speed, your aperture, all that, you could end up with film with a roll of double exposed stuff that you don't want.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about equipment. And so obviously the first thing comes to mind is the camera.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
Probably the key. That's the starter piece, right?
So we talked about camera phones for a few minutes, and it's a great place, and it's a relatively inexpensive place for people to start. And it's always available, and that's the great thing about this. And as we talk about equipment here, and what equipment is right for me, I want to make that point that 2 of my favorite shots I've ever taken in my life were both taken with a point-and-shoot camera, not with an expensive DSLR and lens, because the right camera for you is the one, the best camera I should say for you, is the one that's available when the opportunity rises to take a great picture. It's not carrying around the biggest thing you can find, big heavy thing around your neck that's straining you. And if it's not at the ready when an opportunity pops up, then maybe that's not the camera you should carry around. On the other hand, there are people who do invest a little bit of money in a digital single lens reflex camera, DSLR.
Okay.
And like any other camera, they carry it with them constantly. And that's one of the keys to getting better at photography is always have it with you. What the bigger cameras buy you, besides a point and shoot or a camera phone, the bigger cameras buy you is basically more opportunities. They get you closer to a subject with a lens that goes longer. They can go wider and cover a bigger area. They can have an aperture, which is the amount of light that's allowed into the camera sensor. The aperture, if it's bigger, it lets in more light, and you can get more of an image in a darker situation. And if you have a very small digital sensor, it's not going to pick up very much light, so it's going to be very hard to see detail in a dark room. Yeah,
I'm thinking of all the times we've tried to capture blowing out the birthday candles when the lights are down, or getting the 4th of July fireworks when and you get the pictures back and it's just this crazy kind of zigzaggy lights, but it didn't really focus on it. Didn't really capture it.
Your camera's trying to help you in that point. So before I go into so there's a couple different things about an image related to the speed of the shutter and the size of that opening, and the sensitivity of the sensor inside the camera. But before we get into that, the cameras will try to help you if you leave them in automatic mode. So eventually you may have to get away from that as you gain confidence in what you're doing. and here goes the brain. What were we talking about?
the DSLR versus
DSLRs are, yes, DSLR versus point and shoot. Point and shoot cameras tend to have a very small image sensor in them, maybe 1/6 of an inch. Some have 1/3 of an inch, and that's you know, getting better. A DSLR has one. I'm trying to remember. I believe it's about 24 or 26 millimeters, and a full-size digital SLR sensor is 35 millimeters from corner to corner. So as you get more sensitivity, as you get larger with that sensor, you get more sensitive to light. So basically, photography itself, the word is light writing, right? It's about capturing the light in an image. So the bigger the sensor, the more light you can capture, the more image you can capture over a given amount of time. You see your fireworks photos where you see trails of right.
Yeah, that's blue and red or whatever. Yeah,
it's because the shutter, the thing that exposes the sensor and then closes, the shutter stayed open longer because it's trying to let more light in to make for a sufficient exposure. But if you let a lot of light in, that shutter can just close and shut real fast, right? Close and open real fast, and you'll catch action in
like the fireworks going off.
Like fireworks, much quicker.
That's great. Yeah. You mentioned lenses.
Lenses.
So to me, once you've migrated from the point and shoot, right?
Yes.
You know, so at some point in time, you decided you're ready to be a lot more creative with what you're doing. You want to be able to capture shots in a lot of different light levels, that kind of thing. Talk to us a little bit about those lenses and what kind of investment that is, and how all that works with the lenses.
Right. So the great advantage to a DSLR and to a new crop of cameras coming out called mirrorless SLRs is the interchangeable lens. So they're interchangeable lenses that will focus out or zoom out, I should say, so that the light tube becomes longer and longer, and the field of view becomes narrower and narrower, and it gets you closer and closer to your subject. Okay, SLRs have that ability. Point and shoots have it to a point. Point and shoots will have both a optical zoom and a digital zoom. An optical zoom is just that ability to actually physically move the glass around so it focuses closer and closer, you know, to a further and further point. Whereas digital zoom just takes the pixels, the individual picture elements that make up that image, and just makes them bigger, which doesn't actually zoom. It just makes things look bigger because the dots are bigger. But it's a great quality problem when you use digital zoom. So people should. And I think the camera companies have started to get a little better about that. They're not marketing their things as 5,000 zoom anymore. They'll say, you know, 40x optical zoom. Stay away from the big digital zoom stuff. You don't want the digital zoom stuff. But anyway, back to lenses. So there are lenses, again, that will zoom in close to a subject that's very far away. And those are very helpful in places like out doing landscapes, if you're in wildlife. If you can't approach a tiger, which you probably shouldn't, you want to use a lens that will get you closer. So you'll use a zoom lens, a long zoom lens. Lenses have measurements on them. What's called a focal length. The focal length is just basically the distance from the lens to the sensor in the camera. Okay, and I'm trying not to get too technical, but the longer that distance or the bigger that number, basically the longer the lens is and the closer it gets you to your subject matter. Okay, so the SLR cameras have that interchangeable lens. I can add a lens on my camera that allows me to focus very closely to your face, maybe 2 inches away or an inch away, and with other equipment that's relatively inexpensive, maybe $20, I can get within a centimeter of your face if I wanted to examine the pores in your face or your lips or your teeth or whatever. But so there's that wide variety of zoom ability, and some are not zooms, some are what are called prime lenses, which have a fixed focal length, and they can focus on many different places, but the field of view doesn't change. Okay, those are very handy. Those are very sharp, and prime lenses are nice to have, but they don't have the versatility of a zoom lens.
Some of the others do.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that a lot of us struggle with is making decisions about purchasing cameras and understanding things like pixels and that sort of stuff that, you know, I think it can help us with some of kind of a basic understanding of what that stuff is that we should be looking at, especially when you're, you know, when you're looking to make that move from a point and shoot, or even when you're evaluating point and shoots, because I know there's a lot of variety within those.
Absolutely. So let's talk about pixels just for a minute. We mentioned earlier, a pixel, the word is short for picture element. It's the tiniest dot of light that the camera's sensor will capture, okay? That count is important to a point. I remember maybe 15 years ago, the film experts said, you know, digital is nothing because you can't have a picture made up of 700,000 pixels, because film, a 35 millimeter film, piece of film, has the equivalent of about 6 megapixels of information in that film. If you were to, well, anyway, that was the thought at the time. So the thought was, you know, digital cameras will have to get to 6 megapixels before they rival film. You know, well, guess what? I mean, we're up to 24, 36 megapixels on sensors now, which is one of the things that's led to the demise of film, is we are able to capture the detail, and in some places surpass the detail that film used to have. So pixels are important, but again, to a point. Once you get beyond 6, 7, 8 megapixels, what you're really buying yourself is the ability to make the individual pixels bigger and not lose detail in the image. So you really don't sell yourself on, or buy the camera based purely on the number of megapixels. What's important in my mind when you're buying a camera, whether point and shoot, DSLR, is its sensitivity to light. Is it's the lowest and the highest ISO numbers, sensitivity numbers, and I hate to throw another term out there, but an ISO number, and it'll be on every camera, will have its highest ISO number. It's basically, it's just a measure of sensitivity to light. Okay, it's a standard number. We based it back in the film days. When we went to digital, we just adopted the same system, but it's basically a measure of how sensitive a sensor or film is to light.
Got it.
Okay, start with 100 as sort of a basic number. 100 ISO film or 100 ISO sensor will take, across film or digital, should all expose the sensor the same way. Okay. Now, film used to go up to 1,000 ISO before the detail the film just wasn't that sensitive anymore. Meaning a 1600 ISO film was 16 times more sensitive to light than a 100 ISO film, right? So now we're getting to digital cameras that have the ability to set the ISO level to 25,000, 50, what is it, 52,000, 50,000, 52,000, yes, 104,000, 200 and some thousand. I mean, it's on the way high end, the very expensive cameras. Point being, you take that 200,000 ISO camera, that sensor is 200 times more sensitive to light than your 6,000 ISO film was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that the technology leaps. So back to buying.
and that's a great tip, because I don't think I'd ever really heard that term, right? And you see, even necessarily in the brochures or information, they always focus on the pixels and telling you that. And I'm not sure I really have even seen ISO mentioned. So that is such a great tip for everybody to understand, that when you're looking at evaluating a camera, you need to look at that, because that's going to really help you get a better breadth of the different kind of pictures that you can take out of one camera.
Absolutely, especially going back to your example about the birthday party. If you used a 100 ISO film with a sensitivity of 100, or a digital camera with a sensitivity, ISO sensitivity of 100. If you're in that dark room taking a picture of a candle without a flash, you're just going to get a black image. Okay. With now, when you know what a picture looks like with a flash, I mean, you'll get white hot spots in the picture. You may lose detail in the people that are around the kid in the picture. Now, take the camera that has a sensitivity of 2,000 or 4,000 or 6,000. Your light, this camera's now is at 60 times more sensitive to light than the 100 ISO film was. It's picking up 60 times more light in the image. You may not need that flash anymore. And not only are you not blowing out the picture with a bunch of white spots, but you're actually, now you're picking up the detail and the other things in the room. So the ISO level, to me, that sensitivity to the light is so important. And because it allows you, that sensitivity allows you to do other things, like have a quicker shutter speed to capture action so it's not blurry, or to capture, another term, depth of field. Okay. Is another term we haven't talked about. Depth of field is how deep is everything in my picture in focus. So if I focused on your face right now and I used a very big aperture on my camera, if I focused on your face, I might only get the tip of your nose. And if I go to a slightly smaller aperture, I might get all of your nose and your eye. And so on and so forth, to the point where you go in the smallest aperture will focus from here to infinity. So where that becomes important, again, remember that size of that aperture relates to how much light you're letting in the picture. But being able to focus and just focus on your eye in the picture with and throw everything out of focus, that may be what I want, right? And you have a little more control over that with with an SLR camera, whether it's digital or film. You have a lot more control of that with an SLR than you do with point and shoot. And certainly with a camera phone, you probably won't have that control.
Yeah. So do you have a recommendation of, you know, when someone's ready to get that first DSLR, kind of a base configuration of, you know, look for this combination of, here's your starter lens, here's your starter camera, this is a good starting point.
So the camera companies do a great job of including a kit lens, a standard lens that will serve a lot of purposes with their very basic bodies, their starter bodies. And one thing that you have to, that's so important too, if you are going to buy a DSLR, as you grow with that DSLR, you're going to want to add lenses. You might find that, hey, I see this lens, it's a 10mm lens, which has a very wide angle of view. I want that lens. But if I buy that for my Nikon camera, I'm only going to be able to use that Nikon lens on my Nikon camera. I can't use it on on a Canon or an Olympus or a Sony. I can't. So now if I buy another lens for my Nikon camera, now I have two lenses that I'm not going to be able to use if I switch brands. So buying an SLR, you have to think a little bit about this, because you will most likely be buying into a family of cameras. You will be buying into the Nikon family, or to the Canon family, or to the Olympus or Sony, or you'll be buying into the family.
So is there a difference?
It's like joining the mob.
There you go. Is there a difference? Is there kind of a culture or a usage around, you know, like the Canon folks tend to be the wildlife photographers versus the, you know, the Nikons or the family, I mean, wedding photos, or, you know, or does it really not matter? Is it really more of a choice, honestly, kind of thing? And, you know.
Right, so this is a PC versus Mac argument. Yes, it is. And honestly, Nikon and Canon own the sports market. They own the wedding market. They own all the big event markets. It's either a Nikon or a Canon. And honestly, the markets are split almost 50-50. I mean, there's little bits of Olympus and Sony in there too. And the bigger format cameras play into portrait photography. Point being, you cannot go wrong with either one of those, the major brands, Nikon or Canon. Honestly, if you buy an Olympus or Sony SLR, they are great cameras too. I have a personal preference for Nikon. That's me. I hang out with Canon people. We all get along.
And let it play together.
They have great equipment too. I've looked at Canon lenses sometimes and say, oh, I wish I had that. And same thing with camera bodies, which leads us to a next point about how much you're going to invest. And you know, the camera bodies will leapfrog each other. So if you see Canon coming out with a great new model, give it a little time, Nikon will come out with a better one. And vice versa, it goes back and forth. So really, remember, you're buying into a family if you start buying lenses. And so the family you buy, you are going to be with for a very long time. And there's not a whole lot of people do it, but there's not a whole lot of people that switch once they have a lot of money invested in a given set of lenses, flashes, battery packs, all the other accoutrements.
All the accessories that
go with it.
Yeah.
Where you want to spend your money as you advance through the whole thing, where you want to spend your money is the lenses.
Okay.
The technology, especially in digital SLRs, moves so fast. The lens technology does not. It moves at a much slower pace. And what's more importantly, especially with the big companies, Nikon and Camera, they keep their lens mounts the same across all of their single lens reflex cameras. So invest the money in the lenses, not in the camera bodies. The lenses will be with you for life. The last 10, 15 years, I've been through 4 DSLR bodies. And my lenses, I've still got all my lenses from all that time. I built up a library of lenses. They're great lenses. I take care of them. And I'm able to use them as I move into the next body. And it's great. So you can take, and that's the other great thing about buying a kit lens with your, say in the Nikon world, a really good DSLR is the 3200, the D3200. You'll get a kit lens when you buy that. But you know what? When you move up to the 5200 or the 7000 or even the 600 or what, you know, a higher Nikon body, and it's again the same thing in the Canon world, you don't have to buy the kit lens anymore. You've got a great kit lens that you got at the beginning. So now you've cut your cost a little bit down the road, right? You buy, you find a lens that you really like for sports, for a football field. For football, you get you know, spend a couple grand, which you can do easily, and you buy a big zoom lens with a very big aperture, lets in lots of light, and it's great for capturing action. Well, you can now take that to your next camera bodies. The camera bodies come and go, but the lenses, if you take care of them, they'll last you your lifetime.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what do you do with the pictures?
What do I do?
Yeah.
You know
Are they
what?
hanging on your wall? Do you sell them?
I don't print them. And I used to be a printing fiend. I used, I don't even remember the names of the services anymore, you know, and that's kind of scary. The photos have sort of they still have a temporary feel to me. If they're not on paper, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose them. I don't print them. But you know what?
It's digital.
Yeah, everything's digital now. So you know what? My mom has a digital frame in her. She's 82 years old. She's got a digital frame in her living room, and I can remotely send her pictures.
That's great.
To her picture
and
frame. She
can get the updates.
Yeah. I don't print. I keep everything digitally. I make slideshows and send them to friends. We post on Facebook.
That's great, and I think that's a pretty good trend for a lot of us.
Yes.
So just to wrap up, if people want more information. Where are some good places for them to go to get more? If
you're just getting started, I really, really encourage people to look for user groups or photographer groups in their area. Okay. We have, I live in Lenawee County. We have the Lenawee County Photographers Group. We have about 100 members, or maybe 80. Okay. Either way, you know what? There are people who are just picking up a camera for the first time to people who make their living at photography in that group. And one thing is we love to share information with each other. It's not intimidating. The people are a lot of fun. We get together every once in a while and have a group shoot. So we pick a subject and we just all go shoot it, and we help each other through the process. Yeah. So user groups to me are just the greatest thing. I strongly believe in people taking a basic photography course at a community college if it's possible. Okay. And other than that, read wherever you can. And if I can give one piece of advice to people getting started in photography, and at any level, whether you just want to take pictures of your baby with your camera phone, fill the frame. You've got this much room to work with. Fill every single inch of that sensor with your subject. Okay. All right.
That's a great tip. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and background. It was really helpful to learn all that stuff. Thank you all for joining us on Exploring Hobbies, and please watch for future shows to come.